What's up? This is Patrick of Radicards.com, and in this video I'll be reviewing my experience at the December 9 through 11, 2022 Dallas Card Show. Now, this particular instance was at the Arlington Expo Center, so like the smaller shows are in Arlington. But it's my understanding, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He was saying that they're going to be renovating that space, and I did some research. And it turns out that the convention hall is going to be renovated for like hotel rental space. It's interesting because the parking lot just next to them is a giant Sheraton parking lot. So there's a hotel right there. But the convention hall apparently wants to also have hotel space available. I mean, that's fine. So when that's happening, then the smaller Dallas Card Show will be relocated somewhere else. I don't know the specifics of it, and this is just hearsay. I can't back this up with any degree of certainty, but that's just kind of been my understanding recently as of a conversation with a friend of mine. So we'll see what happens. Whatever happens, I'll be at wherever it's going to end up. I just hope it's not too far away, and if it's closer, all the better. So I only go on Saturdays, as I've mentioned before, just because it's quite a ways out for me. And I can usually cover the whole floor in a single day, so I don't need more than just the one day. I love going down there, though. It's awesome. Kyle and his team do such a great job with these shows. Such a cool thing that they do, and I'm so thankful to be in a city that has something so robust to attend multiple times a year. It's just so fun. So I went and I did my normal digging around and found some great stuff. A lot of my normal stuff, my normal hoard that I usually get. And we're going to be talking about 4 cards in this particular video. And nothing's huge, but stuff that's kind of cool, good talking points. So I want to share these things with you because they're fun stuff. And so let's jump right into it here. There's one dealer I always go to kind of like within the first couple deals. I like go to him and then some couple other guys. And he always had just really good dime boxes. They're just awesome. And so I dug around. I probably spent a good 2 hours digging through whatever he had on table at that time. And I pulled out a nice little sizable brick. I think it was like 140 cards. And in there was some 83 Topps blank backs. And I was like, okay, these are interesting. You know, I hadn't seen these cards before. And so I grabbed those. It was an Al Oliver and a Dave Kingman. And they have the like statistical call out in the upper left-hand corner. And so I was like, well, I'll research these and see what I can find out about these. It turns out, back in 83, Topps released a promo sheet. It was 9 cards intact with 8 of them being player cards and 1 being a header card right in the center. And in there were players who had like prominent statistical values that year. Yeah, there's like a Willie Wilson, Dan Quisenberry, there's a Bruce Sutter, there's a Steve Carlton. And so there's obviously Al Oliver and Dave Kingman. So it's kind of a cool block of cards of guys. And so these were in it. And so these were hand cuts from that sheet. 10 cents. I mean, of course, I'm throw those aside. I don't collect either of these guys. I have a couple Kingman rookies, some 72 Topps, but I don't really have anything from Al Oliver. And so these are just kind of nice throw-ins from the pile. I think these are kind of cool. I always like 83 Topps, though. It's just a cool set. It's one of those sets that has the like portrait shot and then the player image on the same card. I always thought that was a nice design. When I think of 83 Topps, I think of the situation in 1997 when I traded in all of my Super Nintendo games and the console for an 83 Topps Tony Gwynn rookie at one of the local shops who sold cards and comics and video games. And I think that they came up on that deal now in retrospect. I mean, even though the Tony Gwynn rookie has come up in value, I think the value of the video games that I gave, I get it was like 12 to 15 video games and the console. This was in 97 when I got a PlayStation console for Christmas that year. And I was so stoked. Crash Bandicoot was awesome. And it was the second installment. It was a Cortex Strikes Back. I think that was the second one. It was Crash Bandicoot 2. And it came with like a 3D cover. It was so awesome. I still have it. I kept it all these years just because it's a very interesting snapshot to my life 25 years ago. There's a fun memory for me. I always liked that card, the Tony Gwynn. It's a great one. Anyway, I was glad to get these Al Oliver and Dave Kingman from the 1983 Topps League Leaders mail-in sheet. The blank backs. It's kind of fun. So the way I do this when I store these is I use a black Sharpie and I gently write on the backs of the penny sleeves, just very gently so there's no pressing, the card number. And I do it in like the same location where the card number would normally be on the back of the card, so that when I'm sorting through the cards, it's like all right there in the visual periphery. Like it's all like in the same space when I'm seeing the card numbers. And they just got filed with the 83 Topps run. So that's that. It's kind of a fun thing. I was glad to get these. These are kind of fun, interesting, weird. I wouldn't normally buy these if they were like online. So when I saw them in the box, I was like, I can get those for 10 cents. It's not a loss. So that's cool. These are the Al Oliver and Dave Kingman 1983 Topps League Leader mail-in hand cuts. Good stuff. Next on the list here, this is a Mike Piazza 1996 SPX tribute card. And gosh, in 1996, I opened up the only pack of 1996 SPX that I've ever opened to date. And I pulled a Mo Vaughn, and I was super excited. I was like, oh, Mo Vaughn is awesome. I still like Mo Vaughn. He's cool. But the tribute card for Mike Piazza was like a big one. And he has an autographed version of this card too, which is like a very heavily chased card back then. And so a lot of us, we just like wished that we were going to pull that card. And most of us didn't. None of my friends did. Granted, I didn't have a huge scope of like guys who collected with me. One guy, he and I, we've stayed in touch all these years to a degree, and a really good friend of mine, but he's out of collecting now. And so my memories of 96 and collecting is he's involved in a lot of those memories. So it's such a cool thing. But yeah, I remember opening up SPX, and it was such a premium Upper Deck product. And there were gold parallels and these like cool inserts that all had similar shapes. It's just a great product. Even now, when I look at that set, I'm still like floored by it. I was like, this is 96. It's still an awesome product. And so I got this tribute card from the same dealer as the Oliver and the Kingman. And they were like not yet in like the sale box, but I asked him, I was like, is this Piazza for sale? I just kind of added it to my stack, and I gave him the whole stack, and he just gave me like a total that was very fair. And I otherwise would have paid $1 for this card, which I think was also very fair for this classic Mike Piazza card. It's kind of lost a lot of its finesse over the years because people have their attentions on modern product and prospects and whatever else. And so this stuff kind of goes somewhat by the wayside now. But guys like me who still always cherish both 96 products and Mike Piazza, I've always been a Mike Piazza fan. Something like this is going to really appeal to my tastes. And I don't know if this is the first one I have or the second one or whatever, but when I see it, it's just like a cool card. And I like Mike Piazza. I kind of lose track of Mike Piazza stuff that I have and don't have because I don't track it as much as I do my Frank Thomas collection. So I may already have this card. I don't know, but it just goes filed into the Mike Piazza section. Is it museum quality? No. But if I had like a PSA 10 version of this, that would make the museum just because of its significance in the hobby. It's a very specific card from a specific set. Just a cool set. I love this card. This is the Mike Piazza 1996 SPX tribute card. Love it. So awesome. The autograph version of this card is surprisingly rare. I almost never see it in the wild. In fact, I don't remember the last time I saw one out at a shop or a show. I see them occasionally online. They're still pretty affordable for what they are. If you tried to pull one, you'd be opening packs forever to try to pull one out. So it makes sense just to buy it as a single. I know the opening packs thing is such a cool thing, but as I've gotten older, I prefer not to open packs because I like to keep things intact. And the longer they get open, the less they are in the market. So eventually the market dries up. So I always just like to keep things intact and sealed. Granted, stuff has to be open for stuff to make it to market. So, a percentage of everything needs to be opened so that we can enjoy what's in the product. So I'm not against opening stuff. You should open up, like enjoy yourself. Just me as a collector myself, I just prefer to keep boxes sealed. That's just my own way of collecting. Everybody's different. You should just go with what works for you. Anyway, moving on. So this here is a Greg Maddux 2000 private stock, silver portraits to $1.99. This was also in the 10-cent bin. This was probably the highlight in the 10-cent bin because it's a kind of a somewhat rare parallel from 2000 private stock, and it's Greg Maddux. I love Greg Maddux. He's awesome. One of my favorites. Just one of those guys like Mike Piazza, who I've always collected since I started collecting. Obviously, Piazza came later because I'd already been collecting for a number of years before Piazza finally made it up. But Greg Maddux was pitching all that time. So I've always collected Greg Maddux stuff. I've always liked Greg Maddux. There are a couple guys like that who I just always file just because I like them. They're just great. Ripken is very much one of those guys. But there are other guys like Jeff Bagwell. Just a lot of, obviously Griffey is just, of course, but there are other guys who are in that same era who I'll always file to like the end of time just because I like their cards. And so kind of a fun thing. Roberto Alomar was one of those guys I always filed. So with Alomar, the card that comes to mind always is the 88 Don Russ. Anyway, Alomar, his card was like one of the front pages of this binder. Actually, that binder's funny. I kept that binder because even though I don't use it, it's such a, like the rings are like rectangles and it opens and closes super clean after all this time. And I've had that binder, gosh, probably most of my life since I started collecting. It's always been with me. I can't bring myself to get rid of it. So funny when we think about things we keep. I'm not using that binder presently because I prefer a closed clamshell binder now. So I'm trying to envision a situation where I would still use that binder. I just haven't come up with something yet these days. But because all my players who I collect are penny sleeved and put in boxes now. I don't binder my player collections because it takes up space. The pages and binders, it's a lot of money. Binders for sets are awesome though. They're so awesome. You build a set in a binder, you can always like find the holes and then like add them in as you go. I love that. But with Greg Maddux, going back to this card, when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a parallel. I looked in the back, sure enough, serial number 199. I was like, I got to get that. Put that in my pile. 10 cents. We can get that for sure. And so this guy had just such cool stuff. And I asked the guy, I was like, you got really good stuff. If I were to create a box, because these are on the shoe boxes, what would you charge me for the box? If I were just to build a box. And he gave me a price, and I was like, interesting. I'll keep that in mind for the future. Because, I envision myself going and buying a bunch of these boxes from this guy because the inventory is just so good. Some of the inventory wouldn't fit in my collection, but a lot of it does. It's like a lot of the stuff I collect. I put it down like a lot of 86, 87 Fleer, Hall of Famers and stuff like that, but we don't talk about those in these videos because it's too predictable, too obvious. We've seen it a billion times, but it's just stuff I like. I love 86 and 87 Fleer baseball. 87 Fleer baseball is significant. It's always been a valuable set in my eyes. I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, hanging out with a buddy of mine and his older brother, who was always so elusive. Like I never really saw him, but in his room, he always had like brand new comics and a set of 87 and 88 Fleer baseball. And I was always so floored. I was like, dude, who is this guy? He has like amazing taste in stuff. I never met him. But the 87 Fleer always stuck with me, like that white and blue gradient thing on the cards. An amazing player selection. They just, to me, were like kind of out of reach. Like 87 Fleer always felt kind of out of reach because it was one of those sets that just felt like I had to grow into becoming mature enough to collect it. And I've talked about this before. Like when I started playing guitar, I didn't think I was good enough to buy a Gibson, LP. So I bought a Fender. And now I only play Fenders. Here's one in the background, right? So I just prefer the style of the Fender. Ergonomically, it's a perfect guitar. It plays well. It feels perfect to me. So I wouldn't buy a Gibson LP, even though I'm good enough to own an LP, I feel. But it's just kind of one of those things where you don't have to be good enough of anything to get something you want. It's like the parent who doesn't buy their kid the brand new, perfect, amazing, best on the market thing when they're just trying out something because they don't want to be into it $3,000. They'd rather be into like $150 because if it doesn't work out, they're not, out $3,000. They're out $150. It's easier to swallow. So I get that. But once the person becomes proficient in something and they like it and it becomes a part of them, then they're more well-deserving of the higher quality, whatever that thing is. So yeah, I could play a Gibson LP. I just prefer to play a Fender Strat even now. I just like the way they feel and the way they play. They just feel perfect. So going back to this though, gosh, where am I going with this conversation? Oh yeah, 87 Fleer. So I have a lot of 87 Fleer now. I just love that set. Such a cool thing. And Greg Maddux has a card in the update set. And I have a bunch of those. Those are great. It's one of my favorites. Greg Maddux rookie cards, though, are just something special for me. I can remember, I think it was the Christmas of 97, where in my stocking, my mom got me the 87 Don Russ Greg Maddux rookie card. And I was so floored by it. And the price tags were kept on the top loaders. It was like $9.95. I'm like, that's awesome. Such a great card to have. And she also got me the 90 Lee Frank Thomas, which I believe was my first one of those at that time. And I don't remember the price tag on that one. All I remember was being like, oh my gosh, I finally have the 90 Lee Frank Thomas. You know, now I have a bunch of them, but it's just such a cool thing to think like these old memories. It's so fun to go back in time to like, in retrospect, the situations we're in, right? So anyway, when I see the Greg Maddux, it just takes me back. Like I've always liked him as a pitcher. I've always liked his cards. I've always filed his cards. I have a pretty sizable Greg Maddux PC. It's not huge, but it's, you know, a few hundred cards. And so I always like getting his stuff. I'm kind of picky because there's so much, right? I can't get it all. I wouldn't want to get it all. I don't have space for it. Because as someone who's been collecting Frank Thomas for 32 years now, just Frank Thomas. Granted, he has cards in 87 and 88, but I didn't really pick up on those until later. I kind of started collecting Frank Thomas in 1990 when he was the rookie that year. So I say 32 years. And in this span of time, realizing how many cards one player has, it deflates any interest I would have in doing this again with any other player. It's just too much work. I don't have enough time. There's just not enough time in a lifetime to do this twice. I can't do it. One player's enough. So with these other guys, it's just like cool stuff that I see. I'm like, yeah, I'll put that in my Greg Maddux collection. And so it's like that. It's penny sleeved and whatever, it just goes in there. I've talked about this before. I don't really do the relic thing because it all looks the same to me. I'm not really into it. I usually just go for a standard 20-point card. It just looks cool. It's a refractor or it's die cut or it's from the era that I like. It's playing year. So I just have these like specific like threshold protocols that I go by, these rules to make sure I'm not overspending and spending on just stuff. I'm getting stuff that fits into my collection. I've talked about this before, like the fit card, collecting fit. What is collecting fit? Well, it's you're buying something that with a specific like rules because it fits into everything else you collect. It's like this player from this year, this type of card. I have these rules I've set up for myself so that I'm not just acquiring random. You know, you look at my collection, you know exactly what I collect. And you've probably been to people's houses and they have like stacks of stuff. And like, you don't really know what they like because it's all just random. And there's like monster boxes in the corner stacked to the freaking ceiling. And there's all manner of labels for just different stuff. It's hard to identify what someone collects when their collection is so varied like that. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to collect the way you like and whatever, but there's something kind of, I think, valuable in knowing exactly what you like and also knowing exactly what somebody else likes. And there's no obscurity in understanding. Like, you know what this person collects very quickly based on viewing their collection. Like, if you go to my museum, you know pretty fast what I like to collect. The museum has been an ongoing project. I do like a once a year upload on it. And usually I wait till the end of the year when I have like critical mass. Like recently I just uploaded maybe 30 cards in the non-Thomas galleries and then 150 in the Thomas. So it's like more like 180 cards. I say 250 because I probably had 250 total and a lot of that stuff just ended up in the archive, no scan. Because of the way I like redesign my thinking on the museum, like what gets added, there's like my rules have been updated. And so a lot of stuff throughout the year that previous to the rules would have been added to the museum is no longer not. So I think I had like 250 cards total, roughly-ish, give or take. And a lot of that stuff just went straight to the archive after I implemented these new rules. So whatever was left was what got on. I think it was, like I said, like 30 and change on the non-Thomas and about 150 new Thomas scans. So over the years, the new Thomas, that's what I got. And I'm really pleased with that. But that took some legwork. That's why this video is going out a little bit later, is because most of last week was spent processing, working with my VA and making sure that things were getting done and uploading and tracking all that stuff. And that just took some time. It's all done now. And so kind of a cool thing. Anyway, I'm talking your ear off. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. This is the Greg Maddux 2000 private stock Silver Portraits to $1.99. I got this for 10 cents. All right, last card on the list here. This is a Cam Newton 2018 Donruss 98 Tribute Hollow to 100. Kind of a mouthful, right? Now, what I like about this card is that it's basically taking the 98 Donruss baseball design and plopping it into a football set, a modern football set. It looks awesome, though. It really does. This is a really cool looking card. This is my first Cam Newton card, I think. He's been a very productive football player in his career. I was looking up his stats. He's quite a talented dude. So he took over Jimmy Clausen's spot with the Carolina Panthers in 2011. And so he carried that team for a while. And Clausen went on to, he got his paychecks, and he went on to live a very good life, and I'm very, very proud of him. But Cam Newton's career is quite a bit longer. And I saw this card in the dollar box, and I was like, man, what a great card to get. Football cards are something I'm kind of getting into, but I'll never get into the degree that I get into baseball, just because I don't have that same romantic background and history with football that I do with baseball. And so, but I do love football cards. There's a lot of great players in football cards, and there's so many awesome cards. I'm just quite a bit more picky, but I do have a player box for football. And I have a box for like all the other non-baseball stars I like a basketball, football, some hockey, a little bit of golf, and some like random other stuff, non-sport, garbage pail kids. It all goes in like one 3,200 count box, and there's enough room to spare for more if I want to add more. But I don't add stuff to that box very frequently, but it's a necessary box in my collection because I need a place to put all that stuff. And not any one of those categories necessitate an entire box, because that whole collection of all those categories is pretty small. But I'm proud of it. I've kept a lot of stuff. I've purged a lot of stuff too, though, over the years. Just stuff that doesn't really fit. I don't have a room for random whatever. I try not to keep random whatever either. But if I can find a home for it, that's what I prefer. And I don't do the Goodwill donation thing, because I don't think it's a good place to give up cards. I'll find a guy who like repurposes the cards somehow, and I'll give them to him. And then they'll make their way back into the market somehow, some way. So they're not just like sitting on a shelf next to like clothing and used books at a Goodwill. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's such an odd way to move cards, the Goodwill. I've heard that some Goodwills, they turn them down because they get so many. I know that children's hospitals are like that. They will turn them down. Like we don't have any more room for this stuff. The Cam Newton card, anyway, going back to it here. I am a little off topic. This is a Cam Newton 2018 Donruss 98 Tribute. This closes out my review for the December 9 through 11, 2022 Dallas Card Show. Which one of these cards do you like? I would love to hear your comments on something that I talked about today, or some memory or something you want to share. Please do on the comments area. Thank you for tuning in to Radicards TV on Radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Reno, and until next time, enjoy collecting. If you like this content, please subscribe. Thanks. Enjoy collecting.